In Minnesota, under Governor Tim Walz, tragedy has struck again. Now, Walz has spent years proudly declaring his state a safe haven for gender ideology, inviting troubled young people to come there, promising them affirmation instead of treatment, and denying the reality of the mental crisis that follows. And now, a man identifying as female, suicidal, angry, openly hostile toward Christians and Jews, walks right into a Catholic school and opens fire on innocent children at Mass. This is the cost of failed leadership. Instead of strengthening families, Walz weakened them. Instead of protecting children, he politicized them. Instead of addressing mental illness, he normalized it, weaponized it, and called it compassion. Tim Walz created this crisis, and now he wants to cover it up. But the truth is clear. When leaders put ideology above reality, when they celebrate confusion instead of confronting it, when they mock prayer instead of protecting faith, the innocent pay the price. And now in Minnesota, children paid with their lives. Before we dive into today's headlines, I want to ask for your prayers. We're currently just a team of 2 here on the Kerri Lang Show, and my editor made today's broadcast possible from a hospital waiting room. His father-in-law, Tony, a devoted Kerri Lang Show viewer, is undergoing a very risky surgery right now. So we are keeping him in our hearts and prayers, and we appreciate you keeping him in yours as well. Today, we're doing our best, just as so many families are trying to do in the wake of this horrific shooting in Minneapolis. And before we dive into the details of this case, the failures of Democrat leadership that helped create it, and the appalling response from the media that followed, I want to start with what we know right now. The FBI has just released new details about the Minnesota shooter. And as you listen to this, keep in mind, Minneapolis police, they are still claiming they have no motive.
This was an act of domestic terrorism motivated by a hate-filled ideology. The evidence they included in that was the manifesto, what was written on the firearms, anti-Jewish language, Israel must fall. There was an explicit call for violence against President Trump on one of the firearm magazines. Of course, this investigation is ongoing, but there is already a lot here.
We also now know that the mom of a Minneapolis school shooting victim is a critical care nurse who was working in the ICU when her daughter arrived. The mom initially, she rushed to the hospital. She was told there was an influx of victims, but didn't realize it was her 12-year-old daughter, Sophia Forchus, that was one of those patients. Sophia underwent emergency surgery. She still remains in the ICU, and we pray she makes a full recovery. Meantime, former vice chair of the DNC, David Hogg, he says the president is the problem here.
Donald Trump has the power to do something about this. After Parkland, he repeatedly said, you guys are cowards. You're not going to do anything because you're afraid of the NRA. We need to do something about guns. That is what he said. And then he met with the NRA and did nothing. Why? Because he is a coward. And my message to Donald Trump is that you are a coward, sir. You are not going to do anything about this issue because you are terrified of the NRA, even though you have the power to save tens of thousands of lives. You were the strongest president in modern American history with a chokehold over your party and both chambers of Congress. You have the power to end this, but you are not going to because you're a damn coward.
Why is there never any accountability for the shooter? They immediately pivot to disarming you, but what they fail to recognize is the pattern here. We've seen this before. Just 2 years ago in Nashville, another trans-identifying individual in their 20s stormed right into a Christian school with a rifle. They killed 3 children and 3 adults. What happened to that manifesto? It was buried. Case locked down. Why? Because the truth didn't fit the narrative. Colorado, Maryland, the list keeps growing. Trans-identifying shooters committing violent ambushes. Then we saw this again at an ICE facility in Texas. And when them are arrested for firebombing Teslas, when violent radicals call themselves martyrs, the media bends over backwards to protect pronouns instead of protecting the public. It's always the same story. Hide the motive, protect the ideology, demonize anyone who points out the obvious.
I have heard about a whole lot of hate that's being directed at our trans community. Anybody who is using this as an opportunity to villainize our trans community or any other community out there has lost their sense of common humanity. We should not be operating out of a place of hate for anyone. We should be operating from a place of love for our kids.
Let's be clear. If the left really cared about kids, they would not push children towards mutilation. They wouldn't push puberty blockers with life-altering side effects. They'd push therapy, stability, and love. But facts get in the way of that. They don't want you to know about the lifelong health consequences of these drugs. Take a listen to this.
We're launching studies on the potential contribution of some of the SSRI drugs and some of the other psychiatric drugs that might be contributing to violence. You know, many of them on there have black box warnings that warn of suicidal ideation and homicidal ideation. So we can't exclude those as a culprit, and those are the kind of studies that we're doing.
I thank God every day for Maha, because these drugs, they're fueling instability. They're turning troubled children into ticking time bombs. And what's Governor Tim Walz's solution? Just roll out the welcome mat. Turn Minnesota into a safe haven for more confusion and chaos.
Minnesota ranks the highest per capita for being a safe haven for transgender individuals in Minnesota. And can I just say, we can talk about economic growth and feeding children and growing the economy and creating jobs simultaneously with talking about everybody's human rights matters, and we shouldn't be demonizing them.
I'm not demonizing the trans community. I'm saying they deserve real help, not lies, not hormones, not surgeries, real actual help. Every child deserves love, stability, and a future free of self-inflicted scars. Confusion isn't compassion. Denial isn't love. Pretending this is normal is cruelty. Even Great Britain, hardly a conservative country, has banned child sex change procedures. They admitted it's barbaric. If Europe can say enough is enough, why can't America? Because here, the media's top priority is protecting the shooter's feelings, not the children's lives.
Another piece of the puzzle as to who the shooter was. The Minneapolis Star-Tribune says, according to court records, because there's been some confusion about what the shooter's name was.
Yes.
Robin Westman's mother applied to change her child's name in 2019. It was at one point Robert Paul Westman.
Correct.
But since she identifies as a female and wants her name to reflect that identification.
Let's stop playing games. This wasn't a she. This wasn't a victim. This was a monster who murdered children in a church. Now, according to the New York Post, the shooter confessed in his manifesto that he, quote, was tired of being trans and wished he, quote, never brainwashed himself. He also groaned about the long hair and his decision to transition, writing, quote, I only keep the long hair because it is pretty much my last shred of being trans. That's not just tragic. That's telling. That is a cry from someone that has sold a lie. And the media? Silent. They'll never admit transition can be a mistake. Now check out this New York Times headline that reads, Minneapolis suspect knew her target, but motive is a mystery. A mystery? No, it's willful blindness. The motive has been staring us in the face from the start, but acknowledging it would unravel their entire narrative. So instead of mourning and seeking real solutions, the left attacks prayer. Former press secretary for Biden and now MSNBC host Jen Psaki, she wrote on X, quote, prayer is not freaking enough. Prayers does not end school shootings. Prayers do not make parents feel safe sending their kids to school. Prayer does not bring these kids back. Enough with the thoughts and prayers. J.D. Vance, he fired back writing, quote, we pray because our hearts are broken. We pray because we know God listens. We pray because we know that God works in mysterious ways and can inspire us to further action. Why do you feel the need to attack other people for praying when kids were just killed praying? Now, the White House responding to Psaki as well this morning. Take a listen.
I saw the comments of my predecessor, Ms. Psaki, and frankly, I think they're incredibly insensitive and disrespectful.
Scott Jennings over at CNN tried to provide a little common sense thinking. As you can imagine, this didn't go well. Watch.
I think the first question you have to ask is, why did it happen? I don't think it happened because of guns. I think it happened because somebody who was clearly suffering from severe mental illness
had access to weapons that would allow them to carry out a terrible shooting.
And the mental illness was encouraged.
But Scott, what about people who don't have mental illness?
I don't think we can tiptoe around this issue. And when you look at the messages that were written in some of the materials and on the weapons that we've seen, I mean, this person obviously was in a dark dark place.
Obviously.
And I want to know.
Obviously.
I'm not sure the government is in that person's life enough to know, but his parents are.
But what
his
about,
family is.
Scott, what about people who don't have mental illness? We have a huge gun violence issue here in the United States. We lead in gun violence.
But the issue today is quite obviously mental illness. And
if you take away the mental illness, it still leads to guns.
Once again, the left won't hold the killer accountable. They blame the gun, the laws, or you, but never the person who pulled the trigger. The truth is simple. Fix the broken mind and the violence never happens. Tim Walz has failed Minnesota. He created this crisis, turned his state into a haven for it, and now he blames you for lacking compassion. But their compassion is a deadly lie, and it's getting people killed. Here's Scott Jennings on CNN pushing back on that failed leadership.
I actually had a negative reaction to the mayor's statements today. I think it's wrong, frankly, to vilify or attack people of faith. You said thoughts and prayers ring hollow. I think thoughts and prayers are the most solid on days of tragedy for people who live their faith every day. And I think on a day like today, particularly in a church community, there are probably people praying harder for comfort today than they have ever prayed in their life. It strikes me that none of us ever want to know the terror and the absolute empty hole that will never be filled that those parents of the 8 and 10-year-old are going to feel. And I just thought maybe tonight the most useful thing any of us could do would take 10 seconds and just sit quietly and be still and be quiet and think about those families, because they are never going to be the same, no matter what we say.
Prayer reminds us that there's good and evil, right and wrong, truth and lies. And without that moral compass, society just drifts into chaos. True faith, real love, and the courage to admit the crisis we're in, that's what can save lives. Because this isn't just about one shooter. It's about a culture that celebrates confusion, covers up the consequences, and attacks anyone who dares to speak the truth. Here on The Kerri Lane Show, our hearts are heavy. We are praying every single day for the young victims fighting to recover and for those families who are mourning the unbearable loss of their precious children. May God bring them comfort and healing in the days ahead. And today, we also want to lift up someone very close to our show. As I mentioned before, Tony, you are our biggest cheerleader, a bright light, and someone who truly makes this world a better place. We are praying for your full recovery. I did hear a story. I heard that you've been very frustrated that you can't watch this show from your hospital bed. But Tony, please know how much we love you, how much we miss you, and how eager we are to have you back with us soon. That does it for us today. However, if you missed my previous episode on Tim Walz and his party having a complete major breakdown, check out this next video on your screen. You might want to pop some popcorn for it. Thanks for watching today, and have a great rest of your day.